In 1920, the town of Picher, Oklahoma had a population of more than 9,000. By 2015, the population dropped to 0, effectively making Picher a ghost town.
The water tower always said 2,600. I'm going to say between 2,600 and probably 2,000 throughout my lifespan there. Definitely a few more people when I was in elementary school. You know, we had a fairly large class. We had 72 in our class in 6th grade. We ended up graduating 42. So we'd lost a few kids through people moving away and, you know, just different things.
It was a small community, yet they are very, very, very proud people. They have this reunion yearly, and then they've had a Christmas parade like the last 3 years, 4 years or so, and it is. I went up for the first one, and I had to park a mile just to get over there so that I could shoot.
Before Picher had become the ghost town that we know today, it was first a boom town. During the time of World War I, half of the bullets fired during the war originated from the lead mines in Picher, and eventually the town became one of the largest exporters of lead and zinc in the world.
The medals from the war, from the war effort there. And it was a war effort because people of age could get a deferment to work in the mines rather than to go to war. So it was the war effort here.
There's a real historical part of Picher and the Tri-State Mining District. You know, the lead and zinc that was mined over here probably provided us victory in 2 world wars. You know, I've heard as much as 70% of the lead in both world wars came from this mining field. Good piece of history, yeah. And I get a little disappointed because I think the fact that it is a Superfund site, that people lose sight of the historical significance of that. If this was anywhere else and it wasn't a Superfund site, that would be a huge historical note. You know, there's not even a historical marker here that says anything about that.
Many people did not know of the adverse effects of the chat piles. Many of the residents filled their driveways and even their children's sandboxes. Soon enough, the chat pile's toxic waste poisoned the town's water, turning Tar Creek orange.
Because from down that creek is every day since 1979, 1 million gallons of contaminated water. And it's contaminated with heavy metals. One of them is lead. The others are cadmium, manganese, and arsenic, which can kill rats. All of that flows through these little towns associated with the Tar Creek Superfund site. The headwaters of Tar Creek are in Kansas, but the epicenter of the Superfund site was Picher.
The chat piles are basically the waste rock, the flint rock off of the good stuff. They wanted the lead and the zinc, so it was all together in the ground, so they'd run it through and crush it and separate it. And that's the flint rock that was surrounding the lead and the zinc, and those chat piles have been milled numerous times for the most part. So, you know, the mining companies weren't in the habit of leaving lots of lead and zinc in the waste pile. You know, they wanted all the lead and zinc, so they would rerun those chat piles through and through and through again to the milling process to extract all they could. So there is some. The bad areas that you're referring to are the dried up mill ponds, the sediment ponds, where the water from the milling process would be pumped out and it'd have sediment, lead, zinc, cadmium sediment in it. Well, when the mine shut down, those ponds would dry up, and they made these huge sand piles that looked like sand piles. Well, they weren't sand piles, they were sediment piles from the mining process, and that's where your heavy concentrations of lead and zinc, different things come from. So, and then when the wind blows, it blows up dust, and these blow through the air, and of course, we all know the results of that.
In May of 2008, an EF4 tornado with wind speeds up to 200 miles per hour ripped through the small town of Picher, destroying over 150 homes.
I was the fire chief at the time and the emergency management director for the city at the time, and I was also the fire and EMS director for the Quapaw Nation at the time. And I actually sat just south of town as the tornado went across the highway in front of us, less than a half mile away. It was during that time. It was a real helpless feeling. I mean, it's unless you've been there and seen something like that, it's hard to imagine the size and the power of something like that. It's the first time I'd been that close to a tornado. I'd never really been involved in one, and it made an impression. I mean, it was a difficult situation, and it was a helpless situation. I mean, you felt helpless, literally. And I can remember driving into town after it cleared, and just, I mean, it was just leveled. And, you know, it's one thing to see that. It's one thing to see that in your hometown, and people you know that have been affected directly. You know, just like I said, my mom and dad's home, my home. It made it more difficult from a personal standpoint to experience it. You know, to say that there wasn't a period, a few moments of shock there, I would be lying, because, you know, I think you catch yourself just looking around thinking, what the heck, you know? But then everything kind of kicks in, and training kicks in, and you start taking care of the people and doing the things that you need to do. You know?
Today, Picher is nothing more than a shadow of what was. With the chat piles behind barbed wire fence and a majority of the town being retaken by nature, all that there is left is the memory shared by those who lived there.